Hi, glad to see you on your channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It's important to us. Have a good view. Few of the pilots of both world wars were known to the enemy by name. Even fewer were those whose death in combat was the reason for the winner's reward. One of such superstars was Tateo Kato, a Japanese Army Air Corps OSS, who became famous in China in 1938 and died in Burma in the middle of 1942. Tateo Kato was born on September 28, 1903 in Hokkaido in the family of a retired non-commissioned officer of the Imperial Army. With the outbreak of the Russo-Japanese War, his father was called back into service and died at Mukden. The sons of soldiers who died in the line of duty were entitled to privileges when entering an officer's school, and young Tateo, in search of a better share, decided to take a chance and make a military career. After attending high school in September 1918, he entered the Sendai Cadet School, one of the Army's preparatory schools with a 3-year course of study. After successfully completing this school, he was included in the next cadet class of the Imperial Army Academy in Tokyo. Next came 2 years of academic study, 8 months of service in the lower ranks, a year or so of final training, and finally a ceremonial graduation in July 1925. Kato's first combat assignment as an officer candidate was with the 25th Infantry Regiment, in which he was promoted to the rank of Shoy, lieutenant, in October. However, Kato wanted something more, and that more, from his point of view, was aviation. The command satisfied the young officer's report, and in June 1926, he became a cadet at the Army Flight School in Tokorozawa. From the very beginning, he proved to be the best in the whole course. He was the first to be allowed to fly solo, became the best in the training, receiving a special award from the command, and as an additional reward, he was entrusted with a demonstration of aerial acrobatics at the graduation ceremony in May 1927. The newly minted master of aerobatics was sent to serve in Korea as a member of the 6th Hiko Rantai, an aviation regiment that flew the Ko-4 Nakajima fighters, a licensed copy of the 1918 French Nieuport 29. However, Kato did not have to serve long in the overseas territories, and in 1928 he returned to Tokorozawa as an instructor. In 1932, Tateo Kato became an instructor at the Air Force Academy and a senior instructor at the Akino Fighter Aviation School. In February 1936, he was appointed commander of one of the Chutai squadrons of the 5th Hiko Rentai, based at Tachikawa, near Tokyo, and flying the new Ki-10 fighters, and was soon promoted to the rank of Tai, captain. On July 7, 1937, the Marco Polo Bridge incident occurred, which became the starting point of the Second Japan-China War, and mobilization of the Japanese Army, including aviation, began on the 15th. Both fighter Chutai of the 5th Rentai were detached from the unit, and the 2nd Hiko Daitai, an aviation battalion, was formed from them. The newly formed Daitai was immediately sent to the North China Front. On July 24th, it arrived in Manchuria, and 4 days later, it was transferred to the south, closer to the line of contact between the sides. From August, the Chutai operated independently of each other, but in January of the following year, they were reassembled in one place. Despite the active use of aircraft, encounters with enemy planes were not frequent, but from time to time there were major air battles. The most striking episodes in the history of the Second Daitai were 5 major air battles in January-May 1938, in 4 of which the hero of the story took part. On January 30, 8 fighters of the 1st Chutai escorted heavy bombers during the Luoyang raid, and in a heavy battle with I-15 BIS, interceptors scored 13 aerial victories with the loss of 1 pilot. Kato scored his first 2 victories. On March 8, 1938, 7 of the 1st and 8 of the 2nd Chutais flew to Xi'an to escort bombers in separate groups. The pilots of the 2nd Chutai, who won 5 victories, had to shoot on the way back, and subordinates of Kato, who, according to Japanese data, shot down all 4 I-15 BIS that met them. One of the encores was credited to the Chutai commander. On March 25th, 5 fighters led by Kato engaged 18 Polikarpov biplanes in the guide area. Later, both sides received reinforcements in the form of 11 planes of the 2nd Chutai and an unknown number of Chinese planes. The battle resulted in 10 victories for the 1st Chutai, including 4 for its commander and 9 victories for the 2nd. In this battle, Kato's friend and former wingman, Senior Lieutenant Kosuke Kawahara, the best ace of the campaign at the time, was killed, the first Japanese army pilot to cross the 5 victories mark. On April 3rd, the 2nd Daitai received the first Kai-27 monoplane fighters, and a week later, they made their combat debut. On that day, a trio of Kai-27 fighters of the 1st Chutai led by Kato, 4 Kai-10 biplanes of the staff wing, and 8 of the same fighters of the 2nd Chutai participated in the air battle over guide on the Japanese side. On the Chinese side, 3 groups of fighters of the 3rd and 4th fighter groups, totaling 18 I-15 buys, were fighting after a successful attack. It is possible that the Chinese were more, as the Japanese counted 30 enemy planes, including Gladiators. Japanese pilots this time claimed 24 air victories, which exceeds the known number of credibly involved in the battle of enemy aircraft. Losses amounted to 1 pilot killed, 1 of Kato's wingmen crashed into an enemy fighter on a plane that had already been hit, and 1 mortally wounded. Kato himself was credited with 2 victories, with the account of which he shared with Kosuke Kawahara, the first line of the list of aces. In May 1938, Captain Kato was recalled to Japan and sent to the academy to undergo a 1-year commander's course, necessary for further career in the senior officer ranks. In May of the following year, he graduated and received the rank of Shosa, Major, and a position in the Air Force headquarters, and in July, as part of a group of military observers, went on a world tour with visits to the United States, Germany, Italy, and several other countries. In April 1941, after a 3-year break, Tateo Kato received his first combat position, becoming commander of the 64th Sentai Air Group. This event can be rightfully called his return to his native land. Back in August 1938, the Japanese Army Aviation underwent a reorganization, moving from battalion and regimental organization to new administrative and tactical units, in size occupying an intermediate position between the former Daitai and Rentai. The 2nd Daitai was then merged with the 9th separate Chutai to form the 64th Sentai. The new unit continued to fight in China, then participated in the war on Khalkhin Gol. After the end of the conflict, the 64th Sentai was based in Manchuria for some time, and then was transferred to South China to cover Guangdong Canton. During 14 months of flying in this area, the pilots of the unit never met with enemy planes, but the new commander in May 1941 not only managed to find one, but also reported on its destruction, winning his 10th air victory. Now he, without any reservations, went to the first place in the list of Chinese aces. However, this success remained an isolated episode, and the Sentai was not even listed as participating in combat operations. In September 1941, the 64th Sentai began receiving new Ki-43 Hayabusa fighters, translated from Japanese as Falcon, and the rearmament of the unit was completed in November. With the arrival of the new equipment, Kato emphasized in the training of its pilots on aerial navigation in flights over the sea, as well as on ultra-long-range flights. Very soon this came in handy in practice. On December 3rd, in anticipation of the start of the invasion of the British Empire's Asian possessions, 35 planes of the 64th Sentai moved to Phu Quoc Island in the Gulf of Thailand, present-day Vietnam. On December 7th, the Hayabusa kept an umbrella over troop transports going across the South China Sea to the coasts of Malaya and Thailand until dark. December 9th, pilots flew to one of the sites in Malaya, and in the battles against British aircraft on this front, Kato won his first victory in World War II, or 11th, counting together with China. For the Japanese pilots were not accepted to separate victories in different wars. On December 22nd, he was credited with shooting down a Buffalo from the 403rd Squadron of the Australian Air Force. The 64th Sentai was then briefly transferred to Bangkok to take part in escorting bombers for a major Christmas raid on Rangoon. The P-40s of the American Volunteer Group and the Buffaloes of 67 Squadron RAF took part in repelling this raid. At the end of the battle, Kato was credited with 2 downed Flying Tigers, although 36 Japanese bids accounted for only 6 British and American losses. The Allies were somewhat more modest. Their 28 bids accounted for 9 Japanese losses. On his return to the Malayan front, Kato scored another air victory in January 1942 against RAF 232 Squadron Hurricanes and 2 in February in battles over Sumatra and Java, a British Hurricane and a Dutch Buffalo. In March, Tateo Kato was promoted to the rank of Tusa, Lieutenant Colonel. After the completion of the East Indies campaign, his unit was permanently deployed to the Burmese front. In April, another victory over the American P-40, the 17th, was recorded on the account of the Ace. On May 21st, Kato, at the head of 7 fighters, flew to the frontline airfield Akiab, Situé. The objective was to strike one of the Allied airfields, but there were no enemy planes there. To add to the trouble, one of the Hayabus had an engine failure, and the pilot was forced to use a parachute. The plan was to return to the main Sentai base immediately, but the commander decided to wait a little longer. What if the lost pilot would make himself known? The next day, May 22nd, a single Blenheim Mackay from RAF 60 Squadron, with Warrant Officer Martin Huggard at the controls, passed over Akiab airfield at low altitude. He dropped his bombs on the airfield and immediately took off on a strafing run towards the Bay of Bengal, heading further northwest over the water. While still turning over the target, the bomber crew noticed the fighters taking off on alert. So the pilot gave the engines full throttle and tried to keep close to the waves to exclude attacks from the lower hemisphere. The first took-off interceptors did not wait for the rest and immediately rushed in pursuit, dispersing to the sides to more quickly detect the fleeing bomber. Therefore, first the British withstood 2 attacks of single fighters, which brilliantly repelled the air gunner Fly Sergeant Jock McLuckie, although it was the first time he had to fire in combat conditions. He managed to hit the first Ki-43 with a short burst on the first attack run, and the latter was forced to pull towards the shore. The second attacker was also met with accurate bursts and left the battle with a damaged airplane. Soon a trio appeared, led by Kato. The commander was the first to attack, swooping down on the target. After firing ineffectively, he pulled the control stick toward himself, and then McLuckie didn't miss his chance, blasting the fighter's open belly with a long burst. The Ki-43 went up in smoke, flipped over the wing, and crashed into the sea in a steep dive. The wingmen, without engaging, returned to base to tell of their commander's fate. According to the general opinion of the Sentai pilots, joined by the command, Tateo Kato deliberately directed his plane into a suicidal dive when he realized that he would not reach the shore in any case. Whether due to some confusion in the reports of the wingmen or to be less offended by the defeat, the Blenheim, which returned to India almost undamaged, was officially declared shot down and counted as Tateo Kato's 18th victory. The fallen hero was honored with a mention in the order. His distinguished service was based on excellent character, leadership ability, and superb piloting technique. He was a treasure to the units of the Japanese Army. Such posthumous citation, according to the rules in force in Japan, gave one more step to the traditional posthumous awarding of the next rank for soldiers and officers killed in the line of duty. So the ace immediately after his death from lieutenant colonels turned into major generals. Japanese tradition also included honoring fallen war heroes as Ganshin, gods of war in Shintoism. Kato was so honored in October 1942. The date and circumstances of the death of Japan's famous ace and air commander soon reached Allied intelligence as well. On August 2, 1942, all 3 members of the distinguished crew of the Blenheim received a personal commendation from the commander of the Air Force in Burma for a successful battle with a group of enemy fighters, in which was shot down the leader of the Japanese fighter aviation Lieutenant Colonel T.A. Kyo Kato. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Forget to put a like and subscribe to the channel. It's important to us. See you soon.